Hey there, very interesting news. So the category for the entire camera market for all photographers, shooters, and especially for those of you who actually shoot Canon or are interested in Canon. Canon just talked about the EOS R1. They've finally done it. They've finally spoken about the EOS R1. And I think who might actually have the R1 with him or her right now, I'm going to talk about it in the video. I'm also going to talk about, look, the Canon haven't spoken about the resolution and the sensor details, but I have some conjectures, I have some guesses. I'm going to talk about that in this video. But let's first start by giving you a synopsis of what this announcement has been, and so you don't have to read about it. Okay, subscribe to the channel, like this video if you like it, share it with friends. Now quickly, the first point is very simple. Canon has said that it's going to be a professional gear, and they have stressed upon the fact that it's going to be highly durable, highly professional, designed for professional. That means the contours, the button placements, and everything. It's going to be a unibody design, very likely. So it's going to be a professionally designed, highly durable, and highly reliable camera. And reliability could be a reason why Canon has taken such a long time to actually finally come up with any conversation on the EOS R1, because they don't want to get it wrong. They have to get it absolutely right, and it's not going to be an inexpensive camera. It's going to be quite an expensive camera. The next point, I've said that it's going to have a new processor. They're going to combine a new processing unit with the existing Digic X processor. Now the Digic X processor has already been there. You've seen that in the Canon R6 Mark II, the R5, the last 1DX. You've seen that in even, I think, their crop sensor cameras, the R7 and R10. So that's not new. That's been around for some time, at least for 5 years. But they've added something called, no AI stuff, they've added something called Digic Accelerator, and they're naming it Digic Accelerator. So this accelerator will now work with Digic X processor to give you some additional performances. Two things stand out. The first thing that stands out in terms of the promised performance is that it's going to have a new kind of autofocus, especially for sports and action shooting. It's going to be very meaningful. I'm going to explain to you what it is actually going to give you. So in sports shooting, for example, whether it's football or baseball or cricket, for example, I know cricket well. So let's say a bowler is running up to the crease and getting ready to bowl, or the batter is going to hit the ball. You know the sequence of sort of events that's going to unfold in that action moment, meaning that if the bowler is running towards a pitch and he's going to have a certain kind of action, if you want to focus on his hand where he's holding the ball, maybe, you know you can anticipate. It is not impossible to anticipate the next few frames, because you know the typical things that happen in the next few seconds. So there's a way for the camera now to anticipate the next sequence of action and then detect the area that's going to be most important within the frame. And it can detect the action, and it can push and shift the focus point to the most important area. For example, in case of a baseball, for example, okay, after the bowler has bowled and the batter has hit, where you want to focus is exactly the point where the ball hits the bat, right? Or you want to focus on the eye. But I think Canon has figured out a way. If I want to focus on the ball and I know that the ball is going to go through a certain trajectory, maybe the Digic Accelerator along with the Digic X processor now can track the exact location and speed of action, and then accordingly shift focus points and track it. It's a more, you can say, more intelligent way of tracking action and assuring you with much better shots in focus and getting the right kind of things in focus. That's very exciting. The other thing Canon have spoken about is, very clean image output and denoising in camera. And I think it's going to happen for JPEGs. That makes a lot of sense, especially for high ISO shooters, which means, indoor shooters, for wedding shooters, event photographers, for sports photographers, wherever you need to use high ISO, even for wildlife shooters, for example. Because oftentimes what happens is you're shooting in high ISO and you have to take help of softwares like Lightroom or Capture One or Topaz Denoise, and then denoise them later on. Right now, if that can be quickly done, if the denoising can be done by retaining the right type and kind and saturation of colors, ensuring that there is a very little sort of loss of detail and there's not much grain. If that sort of thing can happen within camera, if there is a possibility that you're going to get very clean JPEG image output, even at 16,000 ISO, that's just a number I made up. It could be that you get great results at 6400 ISO. We don't know that, but the promise that's being made is that even at high ISO, you're going to get very clean images, especially if you're shooting JPEG. Again, that's an assumption that I'm making. It could be that they're applying something to the RAW, but I don't think that that's professional. So I think it's going to be applied to the JPEGs. They've also said that it's going to have a CMOS sensor. They have not shared the details of that sensor. I have a few guesses about what the sensor is going to be, and I'm going to talk about that in the middle of this video. They have also said field testing, that the EOS R is right now is being field tested, and that makes a lot of sense. The camera has gone through delays, and I can kind of guess who this camera is with right now. One of the people that has this camera right now, and I'm going to talk about that. I think field testing is the reason why Canon got delayed, and there was discussions that Canon might have changed specifications, right? They might have faced problems with buffering and all those things. So right now Canon has to test it out very well. You've seen what happened to the Z8 first few batches and also the Z9, and the rumors have it that right now Nikon is very serious about testing the product completely, meaning that they're being extra cautious before the launch of the Z6 III, and that could be a reason why the Z6 III is delayed. And that could very well be the reason why Canon took a bit more time as well here. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's not going to be an inexpensive camera. It's going to be quite an expensive camera. It makes total sense for Canon to actually take the time they need and then ensure that it's a foolproof camera, even from the first batch of production. So it's going to be is being field tested. My guess is that I think Peter McKinnon has it. The reason I think he has it is because his video came out within a few minutes of the press release. Now, even for Peter, it would have taken some time to speak, some time to collect his thoughts, speak, record that video, edit and upload it. That takes a certain amount of time. So I think he knew that it's going to be announced today. Don't go and watch Peter McKinnon's video because you can do that after. Because I have a few things to say that Peter is not saying in that video. So yeah. Now, about the delay, I think a lot of people have commented on it, and Petapixel actually wrote an article on it. They said that Canon EOS R might have been a victim of high expectations, and that happens with people, that happens with products, that happens with companies. Like, it happens with Apple all the time. I'm not saying Canon is the Apple of camera world. I'm not saying that. But it happens when the expectations are quite high. Because Canon has taken such a long time, we have been talking about the EOS R1 forever, especially the Canon channels. Forever. Like, they talk about it every week, and there are 2 videos on R1 every week. So the reason Canon is, I think, suffering from this, and Petapixel says that, is because they've taken a long time and technologies have moved on. The Z9 first came out in 2021, December. They announced they came out with a camera that does not have a shutter. It's a completely electronic sensor camera. I'm shooting on the Z8. And I have the Z30 with me right now. I've just kept it here just so that, to tell you that camera gear doesn't matter. I mean, I'm saying that because I don't think I can afford the R1. I don't need it. So I'm kind of trying to tell myself that the most affordable cameras are good enough. Yeah. But okay, coming back, I think what I think has happened is that after that the A9C got launched, right? And then suddenly you have a global shutter sensor, fast shooting 120 frames per second in RAW. So I think Canon thought that their best has to compete with the latest that's out there. And I think that might have caused them to shift from stacked sensor to global shutter sensor, which they maybe were actually planning to launch later on. That might have caused a delay further. And that makes complete sense. There were apparently also problems with buffering and if there were problems with buffering, maybe Canon is definitely trying to make a camera that has very high frames per second shooting. So now let's talk about the sensor. I think they might have moved to a global shutter sensor. Now, Canon have not spoken about what kind of resolution this sensor is going to have, but there are guesses that it's going to be a 24 or 30 megapixels sensor that can shoot very fast. I don't know, but my guess is that I find that after the EOS R3, it's risky for Canon to put out a 24 megapixel sensor, to be honest, because right, a Canon R5 II is going to be out and it's going to be a very powerful camera. It's going to do slightly less problematic 8K than before, probably not going to heat up. Peter McKinnon talked about heating up. He said that, look, it's important that the camera doesn't heat up. I think he talked about it. After the EOS R5 memory, I think they have to get it right. There's also this pressure of doing RAW. There's also this pressure of doing, real RAW, not some strange version of RAW, but real RAW. There's pressure. Also, the pressure is high to make it an 8K camera. So I think it's very difficult for this camera to be a 24 megapixels camera. And if it is, then I'm sure it's going to break a few hearts. And I'm sure Peter McKinnon and the like will come in and they'll have a difficult job justifying why it's still great. I don't think it's going to be a 24 megapixel camera, although there are some guesses. And the guesses are primarily there because they assume that Canon is going to compete on speed and compete with the A9 III. I don't think Canon is only going to compete on speed. I think they're going to give you a high megapixel camera, something like a 50 megapixel competing with the Alpha 1, but it's going to probably do 120 megapixels, 120 FPS at a lower resolution at, let's say, like 24 or 30, and it'll probably do 50 frames per second at full resolution of 50 megapixels. I think you get the idea, right? I think it's good. Canon will have to play it smart and ensure that it's a high resolution camera that can give full resolution all RAW in a fairly high frame rate while shooting. At the same time, they will probably give options for it to sort of give you lighter files but shoot at a higher speed. I think that's a combination they'll go for. What's going to be interesting to see is if they go for the global shutter sensor, whether it's going to suffer from the problem of starting with a high base ISO or not having as much dynamic range. Because for a camera that's probably going to be 6,500 or 7,500, I think there will be criticism if there is compromises on dynamic range and ISO, especially because Canon have had that problem for a long time. So that's about it. I'm going to see you soon with another video. Subscribe to the channel. If you like this video, help me out with super thanks. And I'm going to see you soon with another one. Subscribe to the channel, share this with people who are interested to know what's going on with Canon, and they'll probably wake up to this news and they're going to be very, very excited. So I'm going to see you soon with another video on ZF versus XT5 rematch.